and it moved patients from, to low cost, high quality doctors. And that was a really hard experience. I had never raised money. I'd never made more than $65,000 in a year. I wasn't connected to money. And so what I did was I just started talking about my idea everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Baby showers, family get-togethers, cocktail parties, barbecues. I couldn't stop. I was obsessed. And finally, somebody at literally a graduation said, gosh, I really like this idea, and I would love to help you fund it. And then, so that was my break. And I say this for people on the panel to say, you don't have to have access. You don't have to be ingrained in angels. You don't have to have had made money before. You can do it. But I sold that one really quickly because it was a very complicated integration into electronic medical systems. And the choice, there was like a fork in the road. I either raised a lot of money or I proved the concept and I sold it to the advisory board, which is a big healthcare company out of DC that has since been purchased by Optum. And, when you think about that choice, I had that very same choice with Pix. But anyway, I worked for the advisory board for 2 years. That was my contractual obligation. And I would tell any entrepreneur not to do that. And I learned a lot and I became very proficient in sales. And, I was inside corporate America for the first time and I found that it's just not for me. So I stopped working for about 6 months. I went to the movies maybe 4 or 5 times a week. And I thought, man, I really should start doing something. And then my stepdaughter had a very profound year. So she's diagnosed bipolar and she ended up on a really bad decline. And it started with just little things, but then she dropped out of school and there was drug addiction involved and she ended up in an inpatient facility. And when we got through it as a family, I sat down with her and said, what did we miss? Like, what really could I have done or, all of us could have done differently? And she said, it really starts when I go on these episodes, I feel profoundly lonely. Yet she's got her family. She lived with a roommate. She was in college. And so I was like, this is something. So I started researching, what are we doing about loneliness? And in the United States, the answer was nothing. The UK, Japan, they take it a lot more seriously. They treat it like the chronic condition that it is. And so I got very inspired to start another company. And then that's how Pix was born. And really, like you said, Stephanie, it is still the thing that gets me up in the morning and I think every single person, and now there's a bunch of us, there's 64 of us. I think all 64 of us really are motivated to bring loneliness, number one, into its proper consciousness. And what I mean by that is you cannot solve loneliness by buying a puppy or having a 10-minute phone conversation. It is truly a chronic condition. It should be treated like one in the health system. It should be billable and treatable. And that's what I'm setting out to prove with Pix. And so when you're a loneliness company and a pandemic hits, things get a little crazy. And so we experienced incredible growth, which is a huge risk to your company in a very short period of time. And so, yeah, I'll leave it there. I mean, that's why I'm here. This one's special. This doesn't feel like the last one. The last one felt like I was building to sell and, improve my financial ability and make my investors money. This one feels like a mission to sort of like punch a hole in the earth, if you get what I'm saying.
We totally get what you're saying. And believe me when I say Cindy lives this mission every day, every second of it is infectious in the best possible way. And thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I know that there's so much humility in the way that all of you inspire us. And so it's great to have that inspiration every day.
I want to comment on what you said, because I remember early on when I was trying to raise some money and people would talk about friends and family. And I'm like, I don't have that friends and family. Like I want your friends and family, because I don't have friends and family that can write a $25,000 check or a $10,000 check. So no, I appreciated that comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, it's, but it proves, and I think Brenda, you probably have the same experience, that funding companies particularly for women, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is very difficult. But inciting passion is easier, and that's the first step, because in every kind of fundraising, political fundraising, businesses, in the end of the day, they'll ask to see your financials, they want to see your pitch deck, of course they want to know it's a good idea, but they want to be inspired by you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Absolutely. Christy, you're the last one in and the last one up. I am so excited to have you. This is such an honor. Looking at your LinkedIn and just your history is absolutely amazing. So talk to me a bit about it. Of course, everybody, if you weren't in earlier, Christy actually ran Startup Grind from, gosh, what was it, 2012 to 2016, Christy?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. A while ago. But you ran it for a long time. You built this up on your own. But not only did you build up Startup Grind, you built up your own company. So take it away. Tell me all about you. I could not wait to hear it.
Sure. Yeah, you bet. So, it's interesting. I think I really liked a lot of what both of these ladies shared, but I mean, Cindy, I related a lot with kind of your story in the fact that, like, in a different way, I came from a really different type of situation, life situation. So for me, I ended up with, up until just a couple of years ago, I only had a 9th grade education. And what I had kind of an atypical upbringing. And so what that equated to was, when I was just a teenager in the early 90s, the opportunity to be kind of the founding operator of a company just fell in my lap. It was 2 dentists that just wanted to show up and work on teeth. That's kind of what dentists prefer. They don't want to really do any business stuff. So they hired a consultant. The consultant dropped me in as the operator. And then the consultant wasn't really around much after that. So I kind of was just left with this business to try and grow, and thought, what the heck? Like, I think one of the things that I like about both being a woman in business and having kind of a different background is that when you don't know enough to know where the rules are and what the box looks like, it's really easy to think outside of the box. You just start focusing in on what the situation is and how to solve the problem in front of you and take the next step and the next step. So I think that's kind of a muscle I built early on. And so within just a couple of years of working on growing this company, it was doing about 4 million a year. And it was just, it was a unique experience because it was, I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. And in all honesty, I didn't. But it also was completely on paper. They were afraid of computers. And so we were running this operation, including payroll was me and literally a 10-key calculator for 10 hours straight, typing in numbers and calculating each percentage on each employee and each check. And so I kind of really got to understand what it looks like, how a company is woven together, how every aspect of it needs to connect to the other aspect of it. And so efficiency kind of became something that I was really, a fan of and really good at, I would say. So fast forward a little bit, over the next years, I spent some time in corporate, which I actually kind of like both. I feel like there's seasons of life. I like some seasons where I have the weight of the world on my shoulders and I'm carrying this big creation forward. But then I like seasons where I can take a break from that and contribute in someone else's world and try and bring that fresh perspective and creativity to that environment. So I have done a little bit of both. Biotech company, got recruited to Boeing as an industrial engineer. That was random. Built a few more companies for myself, also helped build a couple companies for other people. But most recently, after my Startup Grind years and spending some time at ASU running the Center for Entrepreneurship, helping people really understand what company building is as a sport, I like to think of it, and how the different paths work. If you're building a incredible cupcake company versus a software company, you have different rules of the game. There's different, decision making. I've really studied a lot around kind of the art of company building, tried to help other people understand it. But I think it was the last 5 years I've been involved with the Startup AZ Foundation, running their CEO peer circles, which is kind of where each year we try and find the top budding kind of 10 or 12 founders that are on that trajectory upwards with a business that could really scale. And we put them in a room together for a half a day every month and help them help each other. Because entrepreneurship is a lonely sport. Cindy, that's a double win for you. Thank you. But it's also, it's just really challenging. So anything we can do to support that, we do. So for me, that kind of felt like having grandkids. It was like I get to sugar them up. I get to go home and sleep really well. And yet somehow I'm still really proud of all of the things that come out of everyone else's work, right? But it was probably about 2.5 years ago that it dawned on me that I was Frankensteining my mascara, and in a way that I thought, oh my word, wait a second, let me take a hot second. I'm not a makeup person. Now I own a makeup company. But I am a mascara person, because I am not kidding when I say that if I'm not wearing my mascara, my phone won't unlock. It's like, who is this? Intruder alert, unrecognizable, definitely not Christy Kerner, right? Like, so for me, mascara is definitely a big part of my life and has been for a long time. So when I really got to thinking about it and realizing that, why is this product always highly chemical? Why is it, one of the things that puts a lot of plastic into the environment? Why is it something that has a really bad reputation for not doing its job of just like staying on your lashes for a day? Like, what is going on with this product? Why is it like so ridden with problems when it has a pretty simple, straightforward job to do? And I had some hypotheses around like the shape and the size of it that could make a big difference from how it's just always been. So I started out to kind of just dive into data, and I've never like built a cosmetics company, right? So I'm really good at finding a lot of smart people and making friends with them. So I networked my way into the cosmetic industry and partnered with some amazing scientists, really dove into the data of kind of what is going on in the mascara industry, which again, it surprised me that the top sellers were released 40 and 50 years ago. That's a sign of a category that just has been lacking in innovation that mattered, right? I mean, there's hundreds, thousands of different mascaras out there, but clearly none of them actually use principles of like design thinking and some of the things that we think about when we're doing a different kind of company than cosmetics. So I thought maybe I could bring that to this world. So so I spent a year and a half with it as a side gig, just really in research development, product stability testing. I mean, it's honestly no simple thing to create a mascara. But came out with some really incredible products, launched publicly in 2020, and we are going at it. We're basically building the Dollar Shave Club of mascara of our category, and it's going really well. So having fun.
It's amazing. And I will tell you, I don't ever do anything without mascara on. So it's perfect.
That's the other thing. I was like, okay, I kind of like a category in which like women feel like this product is a need, not a want, and they're very loyal, and almost all, like over 100 million women in the US wear a black mascara. So like there's an efficiency, which as I said, I love in my business model, that enables me to scale more quickly because it's not such a wide product line with how I approach it. So anyhow, it's fun stuff.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, I love all of your stories. Honestly, like the way that you climbed into greatness and the way that you thought so creatively about your companies is so interesting to me. As a creative entity myself, that's where I find inspiration, is like, oh, I have these weird ideas, but what the heck do I do with it? And personal experiences. And we've all lived these moments that can shape our lives. So really what I'd really love to hear from all of you, and maybe this might inspire something in someone here tonight, but I'd love to hear those specific moments of inspiration. When was it? When did that light bulb go off? And Cindy, yours, obviously, you talked about a little bit, but I think we can dive deeper, right? I think we can dive in and share those moments to those that may not either A, know how to recognize it, or B, know what to do with it. So I'd love to hear from all of you. Anybody can jump in. We'll probably talk over each other. That's just how video calls work now. But go for it.
Well, I think and Cindy's got great experience both about recognizing an opportunity and then having a personal experience. And I think that's what it is. If there's something that's like, this isn't right, or why is this work like this? And this is just dumb, or how come nobody's fixing this? Like those kinds of moments are white spaces. And then, yeah, you need to go out and validate that that's actually an opportunity. But the older I get, the more I trust my gut. And then I need enough data, have data-driven comfort, but my gut is very rarely wrong. And if your gut is going, gosh, this is really bothering me, and I want to fix it, those are those opportunities that I think are businesses. Why is mascara big and is clumpy before you use it all? And why why is it all over my, and so, I do think it's those moments, but as a woman in a large organization, I also felt really not in control of my destiny. And so I tend to, if somebody tells me I can't do something, I said it fuels my hate fire, which isn't really hate fire. It fuels that, hey, if you tell me I can't do something, it just means I can't do it with you. And I'm going to go off and prove that I can do it. So I think working in a large, predominantly male dominated industry, just like really brought up this pent up, I'm going to go prove that I can do these things that people say can't be done or I can't do them. And so I do think that there were some inflection points around realizing that I needed to go out and be, that if I couldn't do something, I wanted it to be because of me, not because of someone else told me I couldn't do it.
I love that. I think all of us hear that too often is, no, you can't do that. But I just can't do it with you.
Yeah. Let me know, because I just can't do it with you. I'm going to go find somebody else who shares that, thought partner vision. And that's a really great, I think, mantra, especially as you're out raising capital. I always equate capital. I say, you want to be a surfer or a wave maker, right? I want people in the ring with me who are going to make waves. If you're going to wait till I have traction and wait till I'm successful, and you just want to ride the wave, those are surfers. Like, they're not nearly as interesting. And I want people who are going to be in the ring and want to solve the hard problems with me, not just have the fruits of my labor after it's already been proven. So it's kind of a test that I have for investors.
Absolutely.
I really resonate with what Brenda said, because I was probably in one of the worst male dominated professions and young and really idealistic. And so that was the personal experience of being a police officer and being in a paramilitary organization. And the idea of leadership in and I do it in air quotes, in a paramilitary organization is authority and control. And generally you're promoted as a leader for time on, right? It's not about merit. And in fact, being a woman would hurt you in those kind of infrastructures. And I really found it soul sucking. I just couldn't believe. I reported to people who were just stupid, right? Like, just not smart, and would say, you will do this because I told you. I remember being in the police academy, and every morning you had to get on the bricks, right? Because it was this floor that had bricks everywhere. And so you have to be lined up perfectly. Everything has to be polished. And there's teeny little like thread like hanging from my uniform. And, this guy is like screaming at me and, you have no pride. And I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy, right? Like, I want to swim in somebody in a different stream than this. I don't want this to be the way that it's supposed to be. And for me, the big experience on the police department, and the reason why I left, and I was miserable for a long time, but it took me a while, I told you I worked in the middle of the night. So it was like 3:30 in the morning, and there was a Jaguar driving down the street that had a gas cap on its hood. And so on its roof, I mean. So I pulled him over, and it was a young black man. He was probably 26 years old. And before I even get up to the window, he's like, you guys harass me. This is my car. I worked 3 jobs for it. Blah, blah. I don't even get anything out of my mouth. And so I just reach up and grab the gas cap and give it back to him. And as I walk away from the car, I think, I am this uniform. I am every person that came before me and hurt that man and profiled that man and was racist to that man and all that other kind of stuff. And that was when I said, I'm not doing this again. And I decided I was going to just forge my own path. And so for me, that was a very profound personal experience. And I was 26. And I think about my stepdaughters who are this age, and I'm like, you guys aren't nearly as deep of a thinker as I am. Because their lives are not as complicated, but no, teasing. But it really shaped every single decision I made after that. Was about this idea that I believed in my individuality and I wanted to express it. And eventually that led me to wanting to start my own company.
That's amazing. Thank you. I haven't heard that story yet. I love it.
So I think I want to highlight something there that I liked about what Cindy said is that I think it's always worth acknowledging I tend to focus a lot more on the positive side of being a woman in business because that's where my passion is. But it's not because I don't recognize that there are challenges and there are difficult situations, because I do. Um, but there's a difference between sitting in our spot as a victim, or like being choosing to move forward, right? And choosing to try and affect change. And then if the environment won't allow it, then choosing to move into a different environment. And I think Cindy's a good example of doing that, because it's our life, and we get to set our own goals and take our own steps. And so I think that's cool. For me, I think you asking kind of about the inspiration and whatnot. And it's funny, I for those that know me, my life story is a little weird. Like, there was a cult, there was like, I was stalked with someone trying to kill me. I was targeted by a predator. I had a brain tumor. Like, I've had just a lot of deeply traumatic situations. And it's something that I a lot of what the pain from these situations are what create the drive to bring good things into the world. And sometimes that's really linear, and sometimes it's in other ways connected. But I think that's something you'll find a lot, is that there's usually some form of trauma behind what pushes us to care enough, because building a company is hard. And that's what keeps us so deeply motivated to continue pushing through all the challenges. And so in that respect, it's worth noting that, like, the obstacles, the way, like all of those difficult things that we go through in life, I wish there was a way to like push through them faster, or like make them like finish their job so you can get onto the part where it becomes something of value in your future. But as we go through those things, I think just remembering and reminding ourselves that they can be a blessing down the road. So for me, part of what that looks like is a few companies that I've owned. My mission has actually been the exact same thing. It's feel better about themselves in life. And I like building community. I like helping people understand emotional intelligence, because for me to dive into the study of how to create peace between my ears was just a really big part of how I became a whole, happy, healthy human over the last 15 years since I got past the chaos. Not that I didn't have a lot more chaos, but anyhow, life. So I think for me, what that looks like is in my current company, it's so deeply integrated into our brand. Like, every package that we ship, I mean, this is our mailer. It's like almost obnoxiously happy, right? It's every email has something uplifting or positive. Like, we really infuse into everything that we do, the community that we're building, like just this concept of women helping women, like lift each other like sisters and cousins and aunts and BFFs, to hack through the tips and tricks of life to be able to stand taller and feel more confident. And so for me, I don't want to go through more trauma for sure, but I am now grateful for, like, the whole knock on wood, but I am now grateful for like the lessons that I learned, because they've enabled me to have the drive and the talent and the skill and perspective to create things that I've seen make a big difference in the lives of thousands. And I hope with this company we'll reach millions. So.
Absolutely. We all do. I mean, it's amazing. And I love what you said about using those obstacles as motivation. I actually have a quote on my desk that says the obstacle is the way. And it's a great reminder for all of us to constantly remember that pushing through is always going to make you stronger. And sometimes you fall flat, and that's okay. And you learn from it and you move on and you jump over another hurdle. But speaking of falling flat, one of my favorite things to hear as kind of a person that appreciates humility, I find inspiration in those that have climbed to your positions, but that have experienced really embarrassing moments like I constantly do in my life. I'm actually really interested in hearing about some really humorous and humble moments from all of you. Those moments where things didn't go perfectly, or you completely messed up and it was super embarrassing. But I think that those are the moments that make us all connect in realizing that all of us are human, and it's okay to be a complete doofus. So take it away, Brenda. You're ready.
Well, there are so many, but I think, at least for me, I suffer with imposter syndrome every single day. Like, why am I doing this? And why should I be, why should anybody hand me $1 for what I'm trying to do? And so I think, but a lot of it has just been I'm a lifelong learner, and after every situation is like, what do I appreciate, and what do I want to take from that, and what do I need to let go of, and then again, how I can move forward. But a lot of it was financial. I know when I was bootstrapping a company, I remember in 2008 with the crash, it was so hard because I had no capital safety net. And so I remember this particular day when we were putting about, I don't know, $25,000 on American Express, and it declined. And I'm like, well, what do you mean declined? Like there was no limit. And I called and they go, yeah, we've lowered your limit to like $6,000. And I'm like, you're missing at least a zero because I have to pay you off. And then it was so hard. And I got the executive team together, the leadership team, and there were 8 of us around the table. And I said, look, we're going to work 80 hours and get paid for 32, or someone's going home today. And it wasn't a failure, but it was like, you felt like a failure. But eventually that company was not financially successful. And we got, I couldn't make payroll. I got into major tax trouble. Like, you want to know, like, gosh, I almost didn't survive trying to just slog through, because I wish I had just said, it's a failure, move on. But I just couldn't in it. And I just dug myself up. I just kept digging a hole. And it was a big failure. And it's still, still digging out, but then again, what can I learn from that it is again, helping me move forward and not make that mistake again. And I think I'm at a point in my career now, kind of, like Christy and Cindy, where you want to give back because you've gone through all of these really hard things, hiring people, firing people, hiring the wrong person, just all the personnel garbage that I never realized how crazy people were until I started hiring people. I mean, I don't mean crazy like in the bed, but just like really like, and so I could tell you so many different personnel stories, but I forgot what I was going to say. Just trying to learn, giving back. So I advise and mentor a lot of startups too. And it's really in the spirit of, gosh, if I could just lower their speed bumps and help them be successful, that's a great legacy I'd like to have, whether I build a great business or not, just because I've got, bite marks from trying to build companies over the last, 16 years. So there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot.
That's great. I love that story, Brenda. And honestly, one of the most recurring things I ask myself is, when I'm 90, will I be happy with what I'm doing now? And making impact on others' lives is so heavily important. And just by doing what you're doing, you already are. So always feel like you're doing great things.
Well, I think of all of us, impact. It was interesting when I was talking to an investor, and one of the people on the board said, the board doesn't really know what to do with you because you're not motivated by money. You're motivated by impact, and they're not used to that. And so that passion and impact, everything I do, I want to have impact. I want to make it meaningful to people. And it's not just about the money. And sometimes that's it. People don't really know how to deal with that because they're used to making things being financial transactions, not being much more, social mission impact. And I think that's what we're all here trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complete common mission amongst all of us. And I thank you for sharing. It's amazing. All right, Cindy, what do you got?
Gosh, I mean, the list is long. I am notorious because I have no filter for putting my foot in my mouth in the worst of situations. But I think much like Brenda, I in between, while I was working at the advisory board for a couple of years, and it was really hard on me because it was I did so much travel, and my kid was small, and but my other stepdaughter, not the one that for pics, I have two. The youngest one was in college at the time, and she would tell us stories about like how crazy college had become, like slipping things in women's drinks and all kinds of, that was not my college experience. And so while I was at at the advisory board, we started a company called 1050, and we knew we were never going to operationalize it, but we came up with and built a prototype of a small piece of hardware that was like this big, and it was meant to like fit inside a bra strap, right? And so it was connected to Bluetooth and had all of this cool like webbing, and it could recognize Wi-Fi. It did all this like cool stuff that now, frankly, in 2021 isn't cool anymore, but it was then, 7 years ago. And you could push it. And if your phone was within like 20 feet or you were within a Wi-Fi, it would send signals to friends that you had like listed as like your sort of your safety network. And it was kind of cool. And we called it 1050 because when I was on the police department, there was a little button on your radio. When you pushed it, it sent out a 1050, and that meant that you were in trouble, right? And so I found a company, and I don't want to like call this out, so I'm going to be very vague. It was in the state of Arizona, and they were doing something very similar in the utility worker space. They had developed this really cool piece of hardware that saved utility workers in rural places and in bad situations when cell service wasn't available. And we got to know each other, and the CEO of that company and the largest investor was like, hey, let me roll your device into mine, and let's figure this out and do it together and kind of go after the college space. And I did. And through the process, there were many occasions when he would lose his temper, right? Like if we had a disagreement on the terms, because it was a lot of a stock purchase, I didn't get any money. I got stock in this growing concern that frankly looked like it was doing better than it really was, right? And he'd yell, or he'd exert his authority. And I had this gut feeling, and I didn't listen to it. I called my attorney and I said, I have a bad feeling about this. And he's like, oh, Cindy, people like, this is tough to, and he loses his temper, and to talk about women and men, that's how men are. It's no big deal. For me, I was like, why is he yelling at me? Right? Like this makes zero sense. And anyway, I went ahead with the deal. And I came not only with my hardware, but I also came with $750,000 of investment money, so we could operationalize inside of his company 1050. And in 6 months, he filed bankruptcy. So all these people that I asked to give money to I had to call them, and I called them personally, every single one of them, and told them that this was a failure. And while, it would have been easy to say it was his failure, it was my failure. Because I knew, and I felt it more than once, and I still pushed forward. And so what I did in PIX, when I started PIX, I gave every single one of those investors pro rata my common stock. So there is about, at this point, like 4.5% of PIX that is owned by those people. And that was the only way I could think of to make it right, because it was just such I was very embarrassed. People trust you with their money. They're not trusting you they're trusting you to follow your instinct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's quite a story. But it's important, of course, to remember, trust your gut.
Yeah.
Your gut is typically right. I know my mom's on this today, and she told me that every single day growing up.
Yeah. I think it was hard too, as a woman, entrepreneur with kids, that, I sacrifice time with my kids, sacrifice time with my husband, sacrifice time with friends. And so you put so much of your emotional availability into the business that if the business fails and you've sacrificed all of these other things, you are a failure, right? Because you don't have anything to go, but I was with my family, or I was there. It was like, no, I threw all of this into this company. So sometimes I think that leads us to hang on. It probably led me to hang on longer than I should have, because I didn't have anything to fall back on that was going to make me feel whole if this thing failed that I had sacrificed the rest of my relationships for. And that was a really hard reality for me to have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, for me, like I described, I really love the study of human behavior and psychology. And so initially, as that paired with business, I found a real deep love for branding, because that's where like the psychology of humans first intersects with the business. But I learned that I needed to pay attention to the side that's called leadership through having made some major mistakes. Because that's the other big intersection of business and humans. So for me, with a company that I was growing through like 2008, 2012, right through that arena, or those years, I had hired early on a young, ambitious gal that I think she was 19 or something. And, again, this is 2008 at the time. I ultimately ended up paying her like probably double or triple what she would have made at any other job that she would have been qualified for. She was my right hand. I really appreciated her. I let me sidebar for a second. The way I look at humans is that, well, I mean, it's true that we all are humans all day. As we're in our work life and as we're in our home life, we're the same human, right? And so we carry our own idiosyncrasies with us into our work, just like they exist through the rest of life. And it's my perspective that we as humans each tend to have a couple of themes throughout life that are our kind of enduring vulnerability, or kind of the thing that like just keeps coming at us. It's that voice in our head, or it's like that thing that is our flavor of insecurities or whatever it is. And so for me, I spent a lot of years with basically, again, like I said, a cult helping me know exactly all that stuff about myself and breaking me down for it. So I have good knowledge on it, but also because of that experience where they told me I was such a bad person, ultimately, as they tried to confine me from leaving, I came out of that with this trauma around, am I a good person? I really sincerely, for the first few years, couldn't tell if I was a good person or not. And if I ever accidentally did something or said something that someone even misinterpreted as having been ill-willed and said something to me, you could just flatten me in a hot second. And so it created a drive in me to do a lot of external performance things that I could point at and convince myself I was a good person. So knowing that this is constantly an enduring vulnerability that I have to like check myself on, it drives me to try and create a lot of good in this world. And the more that I can like heal my internal mindset around it, the more I just get to enjoy this drive of creating good. Until I heal that, I am saddled with kind of this duality around like almost like an insecurity or an imposter syndrome if I am still struggling with like the shadow side of that. So this is what showed up in my leadership, is that in my company, I found myself over spoiling my team members and kind of making sure that they were really, really comfortable by, trying to make sure that their opinion felt as valuable as mine when it came to like certain things, or like just really went out of my way to try and be a good person, which in that situation was to be a good manager or leader or boss. And we had parties, we went on trips. Like, I mean, it really spoiled my team. So when you really spoil someone, they can easily turn into a really spoiled brat, it turns out. And what that did 2 years into my business is I had a freaking mutiny on my hand, because at the 2 year point, a business is ready to like standardize. And suddenly it's less about that startup. It's more about repetitive systems. And like, we now have to go on a rotation for who works Saturdays, or we now have to like, it goes out of that, like, let's go cheer mode into like, okay, we got to do some boring stuff now. Right. And so when I had to make that curve with my company, my team just revolted and thought that I was being so mean to them. So I lost 70% of my team in a single day. And even this person that had been my right hand, that had been like so close to my heart, legit, you guys, she is a beautiful like musician. She wrote a song and played guitar and put it on YouTube about how terrible of a person I am and how much she hates me. And then because our community was very connected to social media, she made sure that got pushed through social media to my entire client base. I was like in therapy for 6 months after this, right? But the interesting thing about the way that, I learned to be a better leader and a better manager. I learned that like it's my job to be that rock and that steer, but I don't need to be their BFF. I need to be like, it's almost like if you imagine a parent-child where like the parent is like, well, what time do you want to go to bed? Like every time they were trying to do anything, the child has no structure. They get lost, you have to provide some kind of like parameters and direction for the team. So I learned that lesson a very hard way, but as the kind of things do come full circle, I think it was, it did help me take a big bite out of having to face this belief of, am I a bad person or am I not a bad person? And so it actually helped me heal that in a very significant way. And then I get to stand through the next years of my life on a higher level of that platform with that particular challenge. So it's all good in the end, but oh my gosh, that one was a really terrible one. So
Did it hurt your business? Did it like
no, it actually didn't. No, because, they thought that they were the business when in reality, what the services we provided and so I lost maybe like 10 clients or something, but no, out of like thousands. And so it actually, I rebuilt the business and I built it much healthier and with like a new team that it all was a seamless transition, which I think was probably disappointing to me, but it was a good lesson. Whew.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I promise you, none of us are going to go look it up because I genuinely hope it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, I tried like a couple of years ago and no, it's not there. So that's good. But...
Yeah. And I will second the comment in chat.
That's one of the hardest things as a female leader is to hire an executive team, and especially an executive team that in many instances the best qualified people are men, and maintaining that leadership role is sometimes really hard. It really is. I've been challenged with that. At Solera, after we raised the Series B, the board really said, look, we're not sure that the existing founding team really has the chops to continue to ride this trajectory. And they wanted me to turn over my entire executive team, which I did. And it was one of the worst mistakes I ever made. And so I also have learned, like, just because they may want you to do something, like, I'm like, oh, they're my boss, I have to tell, I'm like, no. And this is why, and I'm not doing that. And so I've gotten a lot firmer in my beliefs as I've gotten older, because it was a really horrible decision, because you lost that founding passion, origin story, people that had been there. And it was, wow, to the rest of the company, it was like, wow, you just let those people go that had been here since the beginning. And so that was just a huge mistake that I made that I'll never make again. There's an opportunity for people to level up and stay with the organization and continue to contribute. And the investors are not operators, and don't ever let them come in and tell you how to operate your company, because none of them, very rarely have any of them been an operator. And again, having that belief in yourself that you know what's best for your organization, I think is really important.
Yeah. It's interesting, Brendan. I think I may have told you this, but I just took a Series B. I literally closed on March 19th, and I didn't need it, but I knew that it, and I'm glad I did, because the funding that's like flowing into our space, I think it was like 9 billion in Q1. And so, but I found a private equity firm out of Denver that's run by 4 people, and the main partner is a woman, which is almost unheard of. And they're all operators. They all started and sold businesses successfully. Some of them multiple. For the woman who runs the main partner, she had one that she took from 0 and sold it for 1.9 billion. And I was like, these are the people I want to work with. And I don't care what I have to do. I know it's not the right time, but I did not want money people coming in and doing exactly what you said. So they've been through all of this, and now they have a fund. And it turns out that it's really made a huge difference. But the one very funny thing is almost all my executives are women. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, you need some diversity. I'm like, are you, is this a joke? I'm like, am I on candid camera? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of companies that are run by all men, and I don't know,
Exactly. I think about that, like the Supreme Court has been all men forever. Why can't it be all women? Why would that be such a weird thing to have an all-female board? And so I think with Noble, we're being very, very intentional around who we're hiring, and I think it's also, even we just did the whole cap table out through the Series C, so we'd never lose control. Like just planning for things that were issues in the past, I think is really important as you're starting. Like, really think about that intentionality of who you've got on that team and what you want that team and culture to look like. I think it's super important. Yeah, that's
such a good. I'm sure there's entrepreneurs on this, but to plan, to plan out your cap table. That is very good advice. That's not something I've done, but it is important, because it will also help you realize like when it's time and when it isn't.
It'll probably be wrong, but at least at least I'm planning when it's doing it.
Yeah.
Wow. And Christy, I wanted to take some time to seriously thank you for being so open and vulnerable with us, especially on a public platform. It's very difficult to talk about the things that you've talked about. So thank you so much for sharing that. It helps us all connect with you so deeply that I can't even express how thankful I am. So thank you.
Well, we're all human. So
absolutely we are.
Persistent thing that I've tried to get rid of a lot. It doesn't work. It's just sticking around.
Yep. Yeah. It's better to use that experience and help others. I firmly believe that we all go through it to help another. So the last little bit, and I'd love to take the last little bit we have here, is advice. So we may have somebody here tonight that has an idea, or has something they're growing, or may potentially venture into this unheard of female entrepreneurship. And I'd love to hear some words of advice from all of you that have built something incredible, that have experienced the ups and downs of being who you are and building what you have. And overall, I just love to hear from each of you and give some words of advice to our attendees.
You know, when I was considering leaving a big company, and that's a big leap to not have a paycheck anymore, I kept telling myself, you know, I don't want to be 60, 65, 80 and regret never having tried it, because if I tried and failed, I can always get another job. And I always told myself that you can always go get a job, but I would say if you've got a great idea, go out and validate it. Don't ask your family and friends, like really go see if there's a market opportunity there. And if there is, just go for it. I mean, what's the downside? I always have this like unintentional consequence, downside risk conversation happening in my head, but you know, to just go out and try it there's not a tremendous amount of risk, and there's a huge amount of reward. Like we can say, oh, it's hard, whatever. We're all entrepreneurs because it's such a phenomenal experience. It is just amazing to be able to spend your time and talent and go, I am making a difference in the world. And you very rarely can get that working for a big company. So I just say, you know, be smart and go for it.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's that simple.
Yeah. My advice, and this is something that came to me a lot later in life, is to practice mindfulness. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, for me, manifestation and gratitude are actually a part of my daily exercise routine. And I mean by like exercising my brain. And I read a book that really changed everything for me. It was called Manifest Now. And it was written by a woman. And she specifically talks about women in particular and manifesting. And one of the things that women don't manifest is financial success. Like, we feel like by talking about the fact that we want to make money, talking about the fact that, like, you know, we want to be wealthy is somehow dirty. And it really changed the way I started thinking about, like, my future. It changed the way that I negotiated when this Series B people come in, because, you know, they're like, oh, you know, you don't need this, that, or the other thing, because when this sells, and I'm like, listen to me, like, you know, it made me stronger. And it all is because I have literally been preparing for this now for 4 years since we started Pix, or 3, 18, 19, 4, in my brain, and manifesting it. And so my advice would be, I'm not saying you have to get into manifesting, but to really get into the idea of, like, exercising your brain, willing your future, thinking about it like in great detail. It will make a difference. And this anecdotal story I'll tell you is that we have a national contract that will change the face of Pix, and it's out there, and it, knock on wood, is looking very, very, very good. But when we got the opportunity and we submitted the proposal, I took every last person in my company, even the people on the phones who have lots to do, and taking them off by a half an hour makes a big difference. And we all manifested in written word around this contract. And I still have every single one of what every single person wrote. And they think I'm nuts. I mean, they think that, I'm sure they're like, I cannot believe this woman is pinning my paycheck on this manifestation exercise, you know. But I guess I would just say, find what works for you. If it's meditation, gratitude, manifesting, something of all of it, you know, it has changed everything about who I am as, like, a wife, as a mom, as a boss, as a friend, and as a sister. And this is advice I give to anyone outside of the realm of business.
Thank you. Yeah, and to be clear, we don't think you're crazy. Christy, I can't wait to hear from you.
When it comes to entrepreneurship, the thing that I like to help people kind of make conscious is, okay, actually I'll tell it through a quick little story. There's a movie called Joie. I don't know, has anyone seen it? It's the story of a gal that was an entrepreneur that was one of the first to be on a TV show like HSN or channel, selling her inventions, right? So she had I think she had the flocked hangers go big and a few little things like that. So it's a movie that was produced, and in the movie, there's this one scene where she is getting her first deal and realizing that one of her inventions can take off. And she comes from just a really poor family. And her mom is super eccentric. And there's a scene where she's sitting on the bed looking at her mom, and she's realizing, she says to her mom, I had so many inventions growing up. And I really think that, like, if you had just helped me, like, patent one of them, then our entire family could have had a totally different experience. Like, she's just realizing, like, the empowerment that can come through creating an entrepreneurship, right? And she's looking at her mom going, and her mom goes, I don't know how to file a patent. And that to me was actually like a differentiating perspective, in that it's easy for us, it's natural for us to look at something and go, I don't know how to do that. But the mindset that we need in entrepreneurship is to be like, I don't know how to do that, so I'll figure it out. Because one of the things that can sink us really easily in entrepreneurship and create a lot of imposter syndrome is because we will all day, every day. I still to this day wake up every day like, okay, there's like 7 things I don't know how I'm going to figure out, how I'm going to tackle, how I'm going to make it through. And I've just got to find the way. So I talk to people, I research, I do everything I can, I problem solve, but when you really accept the idea that I don't know is okay, and that as you're building something, that's a feeling that should be normal to you, not negative, then it unlocks a lot of opportunity for us, because it just creates a world in which that's our baseline. And now we just go into problem solving mode and creation mode, instead of fussing with this like negative nagging of thinking that everyone else has it all figured out and we don't. So I think that, like, knowing that the core skill that I believe we need to be successful as an entrepreneur is resourcefulness, the ability to just figure shit out. Sorry. But that's literally our job description. And when we're innovating, there's literally no path in front of us. And so it's the exact meme that we've all seen, where you jump off a cliff with a box full of airplane parts and just start assembling really fast, hoping that this is all going to work itself out. So it's terrifying, it's complicated, there's not a clear path, and that's all exactly what the job is. So not for the faint of heart, but it takes a village, it's a community thing. Like, it is something that is also really, really rewarding. And so I recommend it most days. But I would say definitely just give yourself the grace to know that, like, if you don't know what to do or how to do it, that's super normal. That's literally what all of us feel all day, every day. And we just keep moving forward. So.
And I think too, just build a skill set of emotional resilience. For those of you who may have seen the sitcom Silicon Valley, it really is like one day you're going to be a millionaire and the next day you're curled up in the fetal position in the bathtub. Like, it is just this huge emotional roller coaster. And just having that sort of emotional resilience and tool, just, quivers in the arrows in the quiver around how to deal with some of that, is because that can be, just the elation is great, but the soul crushing is also real in terms of just, the journey. It is a journey. It really is.
Absolutely. And I think all 3 of those things combined, you can't fail. Acceptance, mindfulness, and a leap of faith. Come on. It doesn't get much better than that. So this was perfect. Thank you so much, Brenda, Cindy, Christy. You all are incredible. Your inspirations to me personally, to everyone in the chat. I mean, everybody was coming through like, yes, this is amazing. But it's so important for everyone attending to feel empowered, and realize that no matter what we're going through right now, and even as hard as 2021 has been, we make our future. And we can change how we feel, and we can change our mental approach to what is happening and what comes to be in our lives, whether that is through manifestation or mindful practices. So it's important to remain open and accepting, and there's no losing. So I'm super excited to see what everybody does. And Brenda, for your new adventure. I, of course, do need to call out that I have a couple of other things coming up now that we all have all these ideas. We actually have a pitch event coming up in June. It'll be on the 17th of June. It's for a new made up word that I don't love to say, but it's for ideapreneurs. So for those of us that have an idea that hasn't come to be, we have less than 3 employees. You barely even have a company. This is perfect for you. Dom and I will be choosing the initial applicants, and then we'll actually go to a live event on the 17th, which is so crazy to say out loud. A little terrifying, but it'll be okay. Even watching movies now after COVID, everything's different. So it's going to be a great event. It's for those of us that literally just have a great idea but don't have any money. The grand prize is $10,000 free, equity-free money. And a whole host of other prizes. So AWS credits, you name it. So feel free to visit the site. The event is posted, either apply or reserve your spot to attend and watch. And then another thing that isn't up yet is while on another panel, thought of creating a Juneteenth event. And this is something that multiple chapters, so I believe there's 5 or 6 chapters that have now become involved. But with the DEI committee, we've actually planned to do a Juneteenth event to create that awareness and educate the population around funding for underserved communities, as Marcy was talking about earlier, and also making sure that we're educating the public on how to petition properly, how to create federal events, even on our own civilian level, but also make sure that we don't forget and that we are educated from direct historians who know more than I do, and we probably all do cumulatively. So do check out the site, keep updated. For those of us that want to hang out, I'd love to send us back into breakout rooms. For those of us that don't, that's absolutely okay, and my heart will not be broken. But thank you so much, all of you, for being here tonight, for attending, for giving us insight, and for being open to sharing everything you did with all of us tonight. It's been absolutely incredible.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good job.
Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'll make some rooms. For those of us that want to stick around, you absolutely can. For those of us that are hungry, go for it. Thank you, everybody.